$1 trillion has basically gone missing from Chinese manufacturing. But it hasn't shown up the way US politicians keep promising it will. Instead, it ended up in a country that nobody used to think of as a manufacturing hub, Mexico.
This is a scene that you see every day. Millions of dollars of product are coming in from Mexico.
Here's why that matters. Once the US went after China hard, all in the name of Made in America, a $300 TV from a Chinese factory could suddenly cost you $400 because of tariffs. So companies found a workaround, and I think it's kind of brilliant. The same Chinese companies that used to make your stuff in China just built a new factory in Mexico instead. So it's like the same owners, same parts that are shipped in from China, but they're assembled in a different country. You slap the Made in Mexico label, and it comes into the US basically duty-free. Look at this. Last year, Mexico pulled in over $40 billion in foreign investment. That was a record. And I don't think that is actually just America decoupling from China. It's something weirder, with a deadline attached that almost no one is paying attention to. And once that deadline hits, some of these companies are gonna look really smart, but some of them are gonna look really exposed. There's also a second countdown that's running underneath all of this that has nothing to do with tariffs at all. So let's go over exactly what is happening here. I'm gonna start with how big this thing actually is. So for about a decade, China was the United States' #1 trading partner. That's just how it was. But then in 2023, that flipped. Mexico took the spot, and it has not given it back since. If you drive through Monterrey, Tijuana, or Saltillo right now, you will see industrial parks going up faster than the roads around them can even handle, like automotive plants, electronics assembly, appliances, medical devices, all of it. Warehouse space near the border is so in demand that vacancy rates are sitting near historic lows because builders literally cannot put these buildings up fast enough. And if you're wondering why companies picked Mexico specifically instead of just bringing everything back to the US, well, don't overthink it. Labor in Mexico costs a fraction of what you would pay in the United States. Also, Mexico gets tariff protection under a deal called USMCA. That's the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. So it's basically the modern replacement for NAFTA. And here's what it actually means. If a product is made or substantially assembled in one of those 3 countries, it can cross the borders between them without paying any tariffs. That's the whole game. Get your product classified as made in Mexico, and you skip the tariffs that you would have had to pay if it came from China. Now, on top of all that, geographically, you're just one truck ride from the border instead of like a 6-week boat trip from Shanghai. So on paper, this kind of looked exactly like what everyone predicted, because COVID exposed how fragile it is to depend on a supply chain that was stretched across the Pacific Ocean. Companies got spooked, so they diversified closer to home. Except that's not the whole picture. Because once you actually look at who's building these factories and like what's really inside the products coming out of them, this stops being like a tidy jobs or coming home story, and it starts looking like something else entirely. Here's where it gets awkward. Chinese companies have leased more than 5 million square meters of warehouse space in Mexico, and a lot of that space exists purely to reach the US market. Now, Mexico's own government has actually gotten worried enough about this that they slapped their own tariffs on Chinese goods, some as high as 35%. That covered more than 1,400 product categories, and the idea here was to shut down what officials are calling a backdoor into the American market. Let me walk you through what the backdoor actually looks like. So let's say a part gets manufactured in China, it ships over to a facility in Mexico, and then it gets a light touch of processing, maybe some final assembly, maybe just repackaging, and then it crosses into the US. So basically that's like a whole change of address, but just dressed up as nearshoring. So here's the question I want you to sit with for a second. Is this actually America decoupling from China, or is China just rerouting through a country with better paperwork? Because Washington has noticed. And right now there's a formal review of USMCA happening.
It doesn't look like renewal is going to be likely. What we're going to see is a period of uncertainty about the rules.
And one of the biggest items on the table is lightening what is called the rules of origin. What does that mean? Well, it means closing the loopholes for products that just get a token touch-up in Mexico, but are actually like in every way still Chinese goods. And if that tightening goes through the way officials are hinting it will, well, things could get really crazy really fast. Here's the thing we need to acknowledge for a second. Routing tariffs like this isn't actually like a new trick. It's had a name in trade circles for decades. It's called transshipment. It's when a product is shipped through a third country and given just enough processing there to legally change its origin label, even though the real manufacturing happened elsewhere elsewhere. Companies have been doing this for as long as tariffs have existed to basically dodge tariffs. What's different now is both the scale and the speed. By the way, it's not only like finished products. Last year, US regulators had to shut down a separate loophole that involved cheap shipments routed through Mexican fulfillment centers. It was very clear they were being used to dodge tariffs entirely on small packages that were headed straight to American shoppers. Okay, but who actually wins, like if this loophole survives, and who loses if it doesn't? If it holds, Mexican border state economies will keep booming. US companies keep getting cheaper goods than a direct China tariff would ever allow, and pretty much everyone benefits from not looking too closely at the paperwork. But here's the thing, if Washington actually cracks down, two groups get hit hard. First, the Chinese manufacturers who actually bet everything on Mexico and invested in Mexico as their workaround because that loophole is their strategy. The second one here is American importers who built their entire pricing model, their whole supply chain, assuming that this setup would last forever. But there's also a second clock running here too, which is completely separate from any tariff decision. See, wages in Mexico's nearshoring hubs have been actually climbing fast because there just aren't enough skilled factory workers to keep up with the demand. The whole pitch for Mexico was cheap and close. The close part is obvious, but the cheap part has an expiration date and it's already ticking down. So even in the best case scenario, where the loopholes somehow never close, and let's say Washington backs off completely, Mexico's cost advantage is still shrinking in real time. Here's a comparison I think we're not talking enough about right now, and that's Vietnam. Vietnam has absorbed a ton of manufacturing relocation as well, for basically the same reasons companies give to Mexico. Cheaper labor, wanting to diversify from China. Now, obviously Vietnam doesn't have anything to do with USMCA, so there is no automatic tariff-free lane into the US the way Mexico has it, which kind of raises this uncomfortable question. Is Mexico's boom really driven by proximity and cheap labor, or is a meaningful chunk of it just companies exploiting USMCA's rules? USMCA's rules of origin basically sets a minimum threshold for how much of a product must be made in North America to qualify for tariff-free treatment. That means a company can locate a factory in Mexico, do just enough assembly there to clear that threshold, and still count the product as North American, even if most of the real manufacturing and value still happens elsewhere, like China. And here's why that matters. Because if it's mostly the legal loophole, then the moment that loophole gets patched, you will expect a big chunk of this investment to either slow down or actually start building real, deep manufacturing capacity that could survive stricter rules. Honestly, that's already happening in pockets. Some manufacturers are investing in what people in the industry call true nearshoring. That means real assembly, real labor content, and clean paperwork that would hold up even under a stricter review. The companies aren't exposed the same way everyone else is, so the ones actually at risk are the ones still treating Mexico like a label instead of a location. And that's kind of that smart versus exposed split that I mentioned earlier. The companies doing real nearshoring come out of this looking smart. The ones using Mexico as a shortcut are the ones about to get caught. By the way, if you're new here, this is exactly the kind of story I love digging into, so please subscribe. It helps me massively, and obviously it's free. Okay, here's where I land with all of this. Mexico is just booming right now because of nearshoring. The investment numbers are real, there's a lot of jobs right now, but a big chunk of it isn't built on America actually cutting ties with China. It's actually just built on a loophole that has a countdown clock attached. Who actually wins this story has not been decided, but it gets decided soon in a negotiating room based on whether the US closes that back door before Mexico's economy gets too tangled up. And Mexico's economy could actually become dependent on this nearshoring that might not last very long. But I actually want to know, what do you think? Does the US close the loophole before Mexico's economy gets too dependent on it? Drop your prediction in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.